I'm here to welcome you to Self-Publishing Zines and Comics. Today we're here with Cap Ward and Gustavo Vargas to talk about making stuff yourself and all the different angles of that. So I'd like to invite you both to introduce yourselves and your work. So Cap, would you start for us?
Sure. Hello, I'm Cap Ward, they them pronouns, please. And I'm an illustrator and cartoonist working on the East Coast of the US. I work in a lot of different genres, but for the most part, my work has been self published. So that's why I'm here today.
Awesome. And Gustavo?
Yeah, hi, I'm Gustavo Vargas. I'm a Peruvian comic writer and artist, and I'm based in United Kingdom, in Scotland. Right now I'm in Lima, but usually I'm there. I self-published my comics for the last 6 years, if I'm not wrong. And I mainly work in fantasy, science fiction. I make Peruvian cyberpunk stories. And yes, I'm very happy to be here. He,
Awesome.
him pronouns, sorry.
Thanks. So my first question for both of you was like, what is self-publishing to you? Like, how would you describe the idea of it to somebody who's sort of new to this concept? And Gustavo, do you want to start us off?
Ooh, yeah. uh, yes, self-publishing is basically, well, literally publishing yourself. But in this case, in my case, I'm the artist, I'm the writer, but you stop being the artist and the writer and you become your own publisher. So that means you do all that work that usually relates to publishing houses, that it's you promote, you take charge of the printing or all the marketing material or whatever, and basically create the product and put it to the public, whatever that public it is. So basically you produce that and show it to the people and offer it.
Cap, do you have anything to add?
No, that about covers it. One advantage of self publishing is that you do get to control everything, so you can show your work to the best of your ability, exactly how you want it to. That said, it is definitely a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
Absolutely. So how did you get started in self-publishing? What was the first project that you took on and took all the way to publication yourself? Cap, do you want to start us off?
So like my silly answer is I started self-publishing by accident as a kid because my friends and I would make these booklets that we'd fold out of notebook paper with like dragon drawings and secret languages inside.
That's
The
amazing.
more serious, like career-wise one is probably my comic Where the Lotus Sleeps. I had done some anthology work with school anthologies with friends. But this was like the first comic that I had done everything myself, including getting it formatted for printing it, making sure that it was like available to people if they wanted a copy. So that was last year, actually.
Awesome.
Ah,
What made you decide to self-publish it after having had that experience with anthologies and other people sort of taking the books to the public?
Uh, I guess potentially because a lot of the anthologies were like local and like small friend things, and I wanted to be able to send stuff that I did all over the place if I could. So I had the story and I wanted it out there, and that's what drove me to do it.
Heck yeah. Gustavo, what about you? When did you get started?
uh, I was thinking more like when I produce, but now that Cap mentioned the beginnings, maybe it started in Peru, just with digital self-publishing with a friend, but it was just digitally. I started in 2012, 2013. Uh, I had been thinking about making comics, but basically out of laziness, I don't have the time or something like that. And until in some moment, I was just too excited about making them. But printing wise, really put into the public because it was mostly put in Facebook. It was really old times, and it was there. And if you would find it, you would read it. But that it was really not in touch or connecting with any readers, any public by itself. It was in 2014, just before I was, because I was living in Peru all that time. Just before leaving Peru, I produced with a friend a fanzine, black and white photocopy, really old school And it was my first Peruvian cyberpunk story, and some other stories, and some other stories of my friend. And yeah, that was the first time. It was very, very exciting. And that was the first time I experienced this connection with the public, showing them your work. And that really, it's like, I don't know, it's like a snowball that really gets this excitement, because you can see people's reactions and what they like, what they don't like, makes the process a bit more organic. And afterwards, I started producing my Peruvian cyberpunk comics in 2006, 17 until now.
Awesome. These are really exciting and encouraging origin stories. Um, so what makes self-publishing the right choice for a project? Given that both of you have also collaborated with other people or worked with sort of people that are putting the books out themselves, if you have a new project idea, what makes you decide this is something I'm going to self-publish? And Gustavo, are you for starting with that?
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, I wasn't thinking, I've never thought that much about it. It was just, for example, in Peru, everything, there's not really an industry. There's a very small industry and happens very little. So self-publishing is basically the only way you publish anything if it's not going to be digital, usually for free, so people can reach to your work. So it was a very obvious choice in that case. There was a festival actually coming. A friend invited me, and we decided to do this fanzine. The next time when I produced my Peruvian cyberpunk comics, again, I was really excited about making my comic, and I never thought about, I didn't know anything about the industry really. So I just thought, what's the best way to produce a small amount of my comics and show it to people? I wasn't even thinking on tabling. I just wanted to show my work. So I printed like 200 and took it to the convention and would hand it to I don't know, to people I wanted to meet, or to publishers, or to any artists I really liked. So it was basically not thinking too much in a way.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Cap, what would you say if you have a new project? What would make you choose to self-publish today?
Uh, for new projects, I guess really the difference is that like a lot of anthologies you have to submit pitches, or for like larger publishing projects, again, you have to submit pitches. So if you already have the work together, and it's I guess also the format too, because I haven't done a lot of long format stuff. It's like one-off stories, which again is like not always the easiest thing to pitch,
Mhm.
especially if it's already pre-existing. So usually it's I've made a comic and I want it out there. Um, yeah, I could probably stand to think about these things a bit more in advance, because I really did. I fell into self-publishing because I was like, well, I've made the thing. What to do with it?
I really like that phrase, like falling into self-publishing. That seems to be the universal experience in this panel.
Yeah, it's a
So
bit like falling into self-publishing in a
yeah,
way.
watch out, it's quicksand, and suddenly you're going to have hundreds of books in your house.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges of self-publishing, because it's easy to fall into it, but you're right, it's a lot of moving parts, and I think it's important for people who are considering to know some of the challenges that they're going to be facing as they go into it ahead of time. Um, so, Cap, do you want to start us off with something that stands out to you as one of the core challenges?
Sure. I guess one of the core challenges is that you're becoming a publisher yourself. So like places that usually have like 4 or 5 different people for these roles, like they have hosts of editors and publicists and things like that, you're taking that on by yourself, which can be really intimidating. It's a lot of stuff to juggle, but at the same time you can also think of it as an advantage, and to just be curious, because like you can, if you're publishing it yourself, you're not restricted to like certain formats, so you can look into different options. Like I really want to get into Rizzo printing because like I was a printmaker in school, so that would be a really good avenue to kind of combine printmaking and comics. Um, I guess maybe another thing to just kind of look out for is also once you've made the comic or whatever it is that you are self-publishing, because it's not just comics that get self-published, you need to find a way to like get it out there if that's your intention. You could also just hand it out to friends, which is totally cool. but figuring out like what the comic scene is in your area and whether it's like a zine swap kind of economy, whether you're trying to sell stuff at stores or like distribute elsewhere, looking into your options is kind of a good thing to plan for.
That's a great tip. Yeah. Gustavo, what about you? What were some of the challenges?
Yeah, actually, the first thing what Cap was just saying that uh, even if you're going to make just a very small amount just to show it to friends, or if you want to really go into a big public with conventions or anything, I think nothing should hold you from self-publishing. You should try first. Just go if if it's going to be the first time, the same as they recommend when you make comics, don't make like a 300 pages graphic saga. Make 4 pages, make 8 pages tops, finish it, and then go to the next one. It's the same. Just make a small amount, be reasonable, be passionate, but don't get crazy. And many things you will start finding out as you do it, how you promote your things, how to print it better, where to go and who to show it. In the beginning, for me, it was very tricky because I just did it and I had this comic to show, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know there was reviewers, there was I could go to conventions to show it to people, and little by little you start knowing which one might be the best convention for you, which trying to find your public that it's a bit better, and trying to find the channels to promote, because you stop being completely the artist and creator of the comic. You're somebody that is talking and trying to move this comic, which is completely another hat. And you have to know how to do it, how much effort to make, and if possible, try to make the right investments for it. The more, if possible, the more you find peers in a community that relates in a way to you, that will help you a lot, because many things, many answers, many questions you might have, you can get a lot of answers from the community. And there's a lot of people doing the same that you are doing. So it's a good idea to just ask them, so you did that. How did you do that? I didn't know that. And little by little, just go on that.
Yeah, that's, I think, really important, finding other people to share this
Yeah.
journey with, um, other people that have fallen into self-publishing. Speaking of, I was wondering whose self-published work is inspiring you today? Like, what are other self-publishers that you're looking at? Um, Gustavo, do you want to highlight anybody?
Uh, the thing is, there's so many. I have a group of, the thing is, I don't want to start speaking just about my in a way. And the thing is, in the UK community, there's a very solid community. Uh, one of, I don't know, Russell Mark Olson is a guy that is doing right now. He makes a crime thriller based in the 40s mixed with aliens. That is a very cool project. He's an amazing artist and an amazing writer. And he even has a Patreon, and he makes a lot of stuff like that. There's Fraser Campbell, that is an amazing writer. But the thing is, whenever you enter and see self-publishers, one of the things I really like a lot about that, it's that you find many different voices, and sometimes voices that you wouldn't choose, obviously, by your tastes, and you just try that, because sometimes it's not like I'm investing in a huge book and I don't know if I'm going to get into something too big. Just try different things. What I like the most is many times just finding different names, different colors, and just try picking different things, and that informs you a lot, which mainly now I think there's a lot more, you can see a lot more of independent work that stands out by being original, and not that it looks like the third or fourth version of another big comics and then trying to imitate it. So you can find a lot of things. You have to do a bit more of research, but I think basically if you look hard enough, you will find a lot of very interesting things.
I super agree. Cap, is there anything out there that you've been cherishing as an inspiration or a motivation from some other self-published work?
Yeah. If it's all right, I have like samples for like show and tell.
Hell
So
yeah.
Yes.
Jade Zhang has this zine. We did a zine swap last year called First Sight, and it's just this really lovely, like, I think it's yellow and blue, not green and blue, Rizzo printed zine. It's just the layouts are so lovely, and the characters. It's just it kind of explores a lot of queer themes and also just dealing with trauma and growing up, and it's just beautiful, and I love their work. There's also Claire Connolly, who I think is from the East Coast of the US as well, but I can't remember. This is just like, it's not a comic exactly, but it's a zine full of like witch illustrations. They do also do comics though. Um, and then I also, so I'm going to shamelessly promote my friend. Sorry.
Heck, it's,
Um,
I posed the question. You're all invited to promote your friends.
so I don't actually have a visual sample for this one, but Camilla Sucre, we've known each other since we were kids. Not like Dragon Age zine era kids, but like kids all the same. And Camilla has this zine, Sugar Bowl, that keeps coming out. I contributed an illustration last time. There's supposed to be a third one in the works, and it's always really exciting because it's not just comics. There's also like essays, short stories, art, all sorts of things, and it's a really great collaborative, and then also sometimes an auteur project. Um, and that's something that she self-published.
The audience is asking if we could share links to the zines that you're all bringing up and the artists and creators. Is that something you're up for doing after the panel, or as
Sure. How should
as you
I send
finish?
those?
You can pop them in the Discord channel, which is the Bartholomew channel in the thing, or you can pop them in the chat here, and I'll copy them over.
I will have to look them up, so I'll put them
That's
in Bartholomew.
Yeah, definitely after this I can put some links and some
awesome.
links about things that I thought that I didn't say and now are appearing.
We can keep this going after for sure. We could talk about these forever. I'm also going to shamelessly promote a couple of friends. One of the self-publishers that really got me excited to try different formats was Xingyan Kaur, who is a sort of multidisciplinary creator, and they do sculpture and installation. They make comics and zines and games, and I feel like every time they have a new project, it's a whole new format, and they design it and produce it themselves, and it just makes the space seem huge, like you could do anything. Um,
Oh,
and that I think that's like what I look for in self-published work now is I want to go see who's carving a new path and see what that path has. Um, so let's get a little bit more sort of into the weeds, the technical weeds now. What sort of preparation should you do before you take on a self-published project? I mean, I know we all fell into them to start, but now with the knowledge of hindsight, what would be some good sort of steps ahead of time um, that you would recommend people do before starting a self-published project? Cap, do you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. Uh, so technically, so I mentioned that Where the Lotus Sleeps was like my first self-published. That was my first self-published in print. Part of the reason is I had made comics beforehand for myself, but I had not thought about the format. So getting them printed was kind of a nightmare because it turns out I had done the math wrong. So the page dimensions didn't fit right for print, which required editing. So like if you know ahead of time how you want things to be distributed, whether you just want it to be strictly digital self-published or if you want to be able to get things printed, um, that helps. Researching printers isn't always necessary, especially if you use like a standard format. Like American comics have a unusual ratio. It's like 7 by 10 ish, which my comics aren't, which made things difficult. But if you also do like half sheet comics, that's pretty easy to get a hold of printing. But if you do some funny shapes, like I happen to do, you might have a bit more of a journey trying to get those printed in a economical fashion.
Absolutely good advice, and I think in this age of webcomics, a sort of a hurdle a lot of people hit. Gustavo, what would you recommend as like a preparation in
actually,
addition
what
to?
Cap was saying is spot on because that's one of the first things you have to think when you're producing your book, because it doesn't matter how good or how well it reads on your screen or on your piece of paper if you're working analog. You have to think that that's not the finished product. The finished product is what people will receive, and so you have to think of format before. And if you have some technical things try to find out how it's better done. So yeah, check formats, check paper, check with the printer in case, because sometimes if you are really passionate about a format and you really think there's no other way it's going to work in that way, you can go for it. It's definitely trickier, as Cap was saying, but for example, sometimes you say, you know what, let's go just, I don't know, a couple of centimeters more, and that will reduce me a lot of cost, and it's going to be better, and I can handle that. Also, if possible, make printouts and see how it reads and how it flows. Check every detail, because the comic, your story, it's, you put a lot of love in your story and your art, but everything from the design to the lettering to the font. If you're not good at lettering, if you're not good at coloring, try to get together or if not, try to hire other people that are good at that or that can show you the path, because sometimes you have amazing art but the lettering is not well, and it really impacts bad on the finished product. And the same with the design, the same with how you choose to print. If it's too small, too big, if it's too glossy or too matte, depends. You have to think absolutely about everything. And after that, yeah, try to plan ahead. And for example, if there's big festivals or conventions coming, maybe you don't want you want to show them there first. So it helps a bit with bringing some people to know your work. So this is going to be for the first time showing this convention. Usually there's a big one here called Thought Bubble. And that helps a lot of people make first releases, or the new book comes in that convention, because there's a lot of people looking for independent comics that it's new, and that also helps. So planning ahead and getting to a deadline also helps. And in general, also having a deadline, because if when it's your project, it's a bit dangerous to say, no, I can do that in a couple of weeks. I would put a deadline, like if you were hired for somebody else. If not, you're going to be a 2-month project. It's going to last 2 years, and you cannot keep on producing more stuff.
Yeah, Cap.
If I could, I'd just love to double down on what Gustavo just said, because that's so on point. Deadlines are really how I got Where the Lotus Sleeps printed, because there was a small zine. Well, it was like a digital thing, but still, it was a deadline and it got it out the door. And also at the same time, it got me to finally reformat and get my kind of jacked up comic in printable shape.
Ah, yeah.
Heck yeah. So you talked a little bit about like making sure that you know about the format and making stuff look professional or look like you want it to, and being on top of that. What are some of the actual tools that you're using to do that? Are you using sort of expensive software? Are you laying stuff out kind of by hand? Gustavo, do you want to start?
Well, first, when I'm going to start a comic, I usually decide how it's going to be printed. So according to that, I work on the page size, the page format. I know that if I'm going to produce something smaller, unless it's really necessary, I don't need to work on a really big sheet, because it's going to take me a lot more of work, and it's going to be print small, so it doesn't make sense. So because it's a lot of work, so you try to I don't know, to economize as possible, as long as you keep consistency and you keep the quality of your product. After that, I myself have some design training, so that helps me a lot with deciding the format, making the printouts, and checking that you have bleeds, these extra things that are going to be cut when you finish, that the format is going to be okay, that I don't know, that you work at 300, 400 DPI, all this technical stuff that you need, because whenever you do it, sometimes you finish something and resolution is or lower, and it's not going to print well, and you have to make the decisions, or you print it not well, which is not ideal at all, or you have to redo it again, which is not ideal, but sometimes that's a plan B. So in my case, I work on paper, everything until the ink stage, but I already decided the format and everything else comes in the computer. Mainly I use Photoshop for coloring and all that stuff. and the finished product I manage in Illustrator. So I prepare all the pages and produce all the PDFs that goes to the printer. And in my case, I also, whenever possible, I try to stay in touch with my printer. There's a very good printer here, whose name I completely forgot, but he's amazing, Sipuk, and and he might even make recommendations for you. They might tell you, for example, I know you usually work like this, but for example, have you seen this other comic? We could do something like that. Maybe you're interested in that, or I recommend you don't print 200, 300. It's actually going to cost you basically the same, but you will have 100 more books and things like that. If possible, try to, whenever you have the opportunity, also try to work with one printer that knows about printing comics and not only printing, because it's not the same just printing books than printing comics or visual fanzines, magazines.
Oh, definitely. I have worked in print, and I got to say, talk to your printer. Uh, that
Yeah,
that is, you can get so many shortcuts, and you can save so much money if you
yeah,
talk to them about what your goals are and take their advice on how to sort of make them work with the materials and tools your printer has. But
yeah.
that's one thing, and I think that's important. But Cap, what are the tools that you're using these days to sort of make books and get them out there?
Uh, I would really love to work on paper like Gustavo, but it's something I'm just so scared of messing up the math. I have not learned how to properly lay out a comic page for traditional media. So one of these days I'll take the time to do it. I usually lay out my thumbnails on really bad printer paper. And then I'll scan them and then I'll work on things digitally from there. So that's how I do the inking and then the digital coloring as well. Um, I do use Photoshop, though I don't want to. They just, it's what I was trained to use, and for the time being, my subscription hasn't expired. I am learning Clip though, so ideally I'll have a more budget-friendly software soon.
Are you laying out each page sort of individually then, and sending them just a stack of pages off to the printer as
Oh,
files, or putting them together into a PDF, or?
sorry, I didn't know how into the weeds you wanted to get. My bad. No, I usually format them myself as well, either like compiling just pages of a PDF into like a PDF app. Um, like I think I still have access to Acrobat right now. Yeah. Um, and then I do design and layouts myself as well. So it's all in house till it's sent to the printer. And assuming it goes well, they don't tell me to fix things.
Yeah, I might add that, for example, helps me a lot. I invested on an A3 decent printer, an Epson printer, and for example, that time I set up templates and I print blue lines or even the panel borders, so I don't have to think or measure anything on paper anymore.
Mhm.
So it's everything's measured there on Illustrator. I just print that on the sheet I'm going to work. So every template is there. If not, yeah, that'd be very time consuming. And sometimes you think you blew it up well, and then you realize, oh no, it's a lot more squarish because I forgot to put 1.2 somewhere, and it's very different now. It's a headache. So I try to optimize that by working all my templates and all the panels on Illustrator. Then I produce a PDF and then I print on my paper and I draw that, but I never do my panels or any of the page grids by hand anymore because it's a tricky it's a tricky business if not.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think that's a great, like, that moving between like the computer and the paper and the computer and the paper. That's like very much how art gets made, right? Like how books come together, because you are going to make a final product, and it's going to be, in theory, on paper for some people to experience. You want to know what that experience is going to be like, as well as just sort of the, the platonic ideal of the digital final page, which is a beautiful dream, and then you send it to a printer. Um, so those are really important tools, and thank you for sharing them. do you have advice on like tools or techniques for getting these things out to people or getting people to discover them? We've talked a little bit about sort of finding local shows. Are you using other things like the internet or sort of community access to sort of share and promote your work? Cap?
Oh, yes. Community shows for sure. That's been a good start. I do have social media, but I don't have a lot of followings because I'm not always online all the time. But I do make friends online, and we tend to like cross promote. And when someone makes something cool, we're all excited and running our mouths about it on like the twitters.com. Um, I think another thing is uh, like web rings were a thing like early in the internet, and they're kind of getting a revival, partly because people have been a bit frustrated with just like platform censorship and the ways that you can just so easily lose any progress you've made with publicity. And that's been a really great way. I joined Ink Shrines, which is run by Sloan Leong. And there's so many great cartoonists on that. So that's been one way that I've been discovering work and also finding work that I want to share and read with others.
Sorry, what was that? Web rings?
Yeah, it's like a I guess it's kind of like a not quite a database, but like people just link their websites together. So you have like a directory of different things that you can look for. And it's not just artists, but like in this example, it's a web ring of cartoonists. So everyone links ways to find their work. And if you link to the web ring itself, it's easy to get a hold of. I can share that link too.
Yeah,
That would
yeah,
be
yeah. That
awesome.
sounds very interesting. I didn't know about that.
It takes me back to my GeoCities days. And they worked. They worked really well at that point. We didn't have Twitter. We had a link list on each website. Um, I want to remind the audience we're about halfway or a little over halfway done. If you have questions, if you can drop them in the WebEx chat, I'm going to just note them down and we will get to them in a few minutes because I definitely want to know what you're interested in as well. Gustavo, what are some tools you're using to promote and get your books out there?
Similar as CAP, conventions and festivals are very, very important because that's how you get to connect with people and people that have no idea about your work can find your work. And also the community. Try to embrace a community where you feel comfortable or you can relate to, even though if it's not the things you do or not by style. Sometimes there's just a friendship that comes along because you realize one makes, I don't know, very intimate stories. Another person can make like science fiction crazy, but it doesn't matter. Everybody is trying to make a beautiful project out of it. So a lot of people is interested in many things and many subjects. So community is very important. I try to not try to, but I stay on social media too, Instagram, even Facebook, Twitter. I try to put regularly, and over there also I try to in some moment in some way create a connection. But it's a lot of hard work, and especially through COVID years, it's been a bit harder to feel a bit like locked into that and become something like a weird beast in a way because you find beautiful things and you find the worst things at the same time. But it's basically try to maintain open gates to connect readers with you and try to put your work at least that could be found in a way. So it's not that hard to be found. But it's definitely one of the trickiest parts about self-publishing. You're trying to show people where your work is and trying to promote your work and not sounding like exactly the same tape. Like
Yeah, have a few different lines.
yeah, different pages. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, different approaches.
Um, the other tool I want to talk about, and we don't have to go in too deep on this, but how would you recommend people approach shipping things? Do you have any tips before people go to the post office? Um, and I'll let if anyone has one, you can share it. We also don't have to talk about the dark beast that is the post office, but it is a part of all this. So, you have any survival techniques? Uh, Gustavo, you're laughing.
Yeah, no, the thing is, yeah, it's getting harder and harder. That's the best choice. I mean, the good thing is we have digital things. Usually try to put your things digital in case people cannot buy your books, because especially international shipping or a big book, many times the shipping is more costly than the actual book, and that uh, it's not like they want to make it expensive. I mean, the creators, they just cannot send it any other way. I have no real tricks. I try to that's also something I get in consideration sometimes when I print, uh, how much is going to cost something. So I try to make a math. If maybe that pushes me too much onto a next level of weight for shipping, maybe I don't know, cut the book in half. Or if I know that, then I make a nice book, ideally, so people wouldn't bother that much about the shipping. Usually we use here one that is the most normal post, that is Royal Mail in UK. That works very, in general, very well, but in UK international prices are getting higher and higher, and I really appreciate. I have my latest Kickstarter. I had definitely plenty backers from USA, and I couldn't appreciate more, because I know they're paying a lot of money only on shipping, and that's me just transferring money to
Yeah,
to to the post office. That's it. It's there's nothing I can do about it. If I could go any less, I would just start losing money. So yeah, no, it's tricky. Try to make digitals. Try to think a bit about weights. Try to organize yourself. It's going to make sense, because sometimes, again, unless you really feel that that has to be that way, but sometimes you can make decisions in format or in weight before printing, checking all the prices and really understanding what are your choices.
it's a deep hole of information to get into, eh?
Yeah, it's very complex.
Yeah.
uh,
Cap, do you have any tips for folks on this side of the ocean?
Yeah.
On the North American side of the ocean? Sorry.
Uh, some of it does very much carry over because you do want to know what size and what weight things, or roughly. Like if you're making a 500-page tome, that's going to be a brick. That's going to be expensive to ship. But if you have like minis, you have like a little more leeway, like mini comics, like to be that, and also there's a bunch of different ways that you can ship things. Like I know some people do ship media mail, but I do know that has like a tricky history with comics because you explicitly in the United States cannot ship anything with advertisements in media mail. And regardless of whether your comic has advertisements, sometimes the post office will assume that like mainstream publishers like Marvel and DC, they'll have advertisements in their comics, and they assume comic is comic, it's going to have ads, so you will get banned from using media mail sometimes, even if it's not justified. I tend to do stuff through first class mail, um, and it's in an envelope, but it's a rigid envelope, which counts as a package, which is a little bit more expensive than just shipping a floppy envelope, but it does mean that people get their stuff and it's not bent or beat up. Um, Looking into good packaging is pretty nice. Like if you can get mailers that have like I'm pretty sure mine are recyclable. I don't have any copies on hand, but like if you can get like paper stuff that has like padding in it and then also sleeves to put your things in, if it gets rained on, it doesn't get ruined, which is really nice. Um, Packaging.
Hmm. Thank you for getting into the weeds on that. I do think it's important. I think that was the first hurdle I hit was, oh, this is how much this costs. Um, and yeah, it's not, the creators don't keep that money. It goes right to the post office, 100% of it. So as we get closer to the end, I wanted to ask, do you see self-publishing as a sustainable part of your practice or your career going forward? And is it something you want to keep doing, or are you seeing it as sort of like a stage you're going to be moving through as you work in different ways? Um, because I think both are really valid ways to sort of approach and experience it. And I'd like to know how each of you has sort of been finding it. Cap, how about you?
So I'm definitely like new in town. I did mention that like I started like self-publishing in print last year. That said, I would very much like to keep this as a part of my ongoing practice. Like I do have like goals of working in graphic novels, either just on my own self-publishing or through publishers, whatever works out. But I definitely would like to keep making the short stories because there's a lot of ideas that I have clattering in the back of my hand, in the back of my head, and if I have to spend 5 years on a story, I'm still going to have other ideas I want to work on. So making small things that I can just get out quickly and still work on like the bigger ideas that I have is something that I'd look forward to doing. It's just going to be figuring out time.
Oh yeah. Gustavo, what about you? You've been self-publishing
Uh,
for a while now.
yes, definitely. I want to the same as Cap. I want to keep both. If possible, I would like to get to a broader audience. Sometimes it's not really easy for you to get to a broader audience unless uh, your work gets published by a big publisher. But at the same time, I really want to keep doing my own stuff because sometimes you have great ideas. There's a lot of even, I don't know, you have big pros that sometimes have crazy ideas and passionate works that don't find a place. And sometimes it's not that easy as they don't want to. Sometimes there's a lot of money involved and planning that they just cannot fit. I've heard more than once that there's art directors saying, I want to work with that artist. I've been trying to work with this artist for 5 years, but I didn't find the time to do that, the right project, and if they are free at the same time. So it's there's a lot of things that happen at this about those decisions. It's not just we don't like your work. It's like we like your work, but we can't produce it right now. So I think that offers a very valid way to produce a project. Sometimes you have smaller projects, sometimes you have bigger projects. So yeah, I definitely want to keep on self-publishing my things. And I think it's a very valid way to jump between those two if you can work with publishers and work with self-publishing at the same time. Yeah, it's been really cool. It's been, I don't know, it's on my heart in a way. It's what been creating the, you know, this community, how this community reacts, and they really understand the passion you put into it, and the passion. It's easier for you to see the reader in the face, I think, and that's very nice.
This is all really heartwarming. Do you feel like a self-published book is a closer connection with your readers from you to them and from them to you than something that maybe goes through a publisher or goes through an anthology? Gustavo?
Uh, I think so. I think so. I think it's I haven't I have never been published. I mean, my own work published by a big publisher, but I think it creates an easier link with your readership. I think it's easier for you to portray yourself as of what you want to do because uh, when it's a publisher, you have a big house representing your voice. So it's not always you. It's somebody saying that you said something. And even though they're trying to be honest, they have to there's ways they do it, and it doesn't come directly. There's a filter going there, whether it's good or not. But there's a filter. It's not direct, and the more raw way to get to know a creator and where their ideas come from and why they're doing it, and a closer link to that, I think is the self-publishing ways is very cool, and it's very free because you don't need to spend big amounts of money on just making a 4-page story, a 2-page story. If you want to, yeah, you can make a 200 story, but it's very comic wise, do it yourself, and that's a very powerful tool. You can put any story, any voice to anything basically.
Heck yeah. Cap, any thoughts?
I definitely agree with Gustavo. Um, you even if you have like the best editor in the world who gives you like a lot of free reign, there's still like at the end of the day a slight pressure with the fact that you have to make sure that this is something that the publisher can sell and can get out there. And knowing that audiences have expectations of the publisher, whether or not they know your work, you kind of, to some degree, you have to make it work for not just you, but for them and the audience that they have.
Mhm.
Self-publishing means that it's all on you, but it also means that you have free reign to do what you like. Like even things as simple as like publishing formats. Like if you wanted to publish something with image, in most cases, it's going to be the traditional American size, which is about like 7 by 10 inches. So that formally limits how you can change things in the book, like visual layouts. If you wanted to do a square format, that'd be a bit harder to sell. But with self-publishing, if you wanted to do square comics, you could do that all day long as you have the resources to get it made, um, which is something that I don't think people always think about in like the ways that like physical objects and how they are made can change like the creative process leading up to it, which is why it's so important to think about how you're going to get these things out in the world even before they exist as a concrete object.
These are really solid points. Thank you so much. Um, Last call for audience questions, but we will pop over into the Bartholomew channel to share some other names and links afterwards. And while we're letting the audience sort of consider asking questions or just wait for those sweet, sweet links, I would like to ask both of you to let everyone know where they can find you and your work, and if you're doing anything else here as part of Flights of Foundry this weekend. Cap?
Yeah, I will definitely post links in the Discord. I don't have all of them available right now. That said, if you can just follow along with what I'm saying, I'm Cap Ward. My handle online is at Sevara, Cevarra, for Twitter and Instagram. And then my art website is artcward.com. And that's where you can see samples of my comics and illustration work. I'll also be doing some other panels with Flights of Foundry. Um, Inventing the Future in Comics is later tonight. Well, tonight, my time zone. I'm not sure where y'all are listening from, but with Sloan Leong moderating, and there's a lot of other people who work in science fiction and comics. And then I also have an art showcase, which is an hour from now, which is just me talking about my art and my process. And then there's a panel that I'm on about writing, and I do not remember the time slot. Sorry.
They can definitely check the schedule.
Yeah.
You've got a busy day.
That's a
Gus
nice Sunday.
yeah, Gustavo, where can people find you, and will you be around Flights of Foundry again today?
Yes. Just before, I just remember one thing I noted. Going back to a previous question, when I prepare my comics in color, one thing that we have to take in note is making sure that it works on CMYK and not RGB. That's also a very common mistake that because it prints completely differently. Yes, that I didn't want to forget to say
No,
that.
it's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Well, I'm as Gustavo Vargas with double F. That's why I changed from Gustavo because I think I'm the only Gustavo Vargas, so it's easy to find me. They can just look up for Peruvian cyberpunk and they will find my works easily, my links, and also I have a big cartel shop where I sell my comics on physical comics and also digitally. I'm going to be on another panel, I think in around 3 hours. It's a spotlight on Latinx science fiction and fantasies with, I don't remember anymore, but I'm going to be a bit more, at least one more panel I'm going to be around.
Awesome. And I am kicking around the internet at Portable City on Twitter and Instagram, or portablecity.net to see what I make and what I self-publish. And I am also going to be here for a busy day. I'm hosting, and this might be relevant to people watching this, a sort of zine-themed hangout, meet and greet. We can all hop on and chat. It's in 4 hours. and I'm going to be, I set up my zine shelf on my printer so we can show and tell, talk about what we love, what we've seen, what we make, what we collect. And I invite you all to join me if you are around to talk zines. And then I'm also doing an art showcase an hour after that, which I'm excited and nervous for. This was absolutely wonderful. I'm so grateful to both of you, Gustavo and Cap, for coming out and talking about this. It's such an exciting, I think, part of the creative process that I think people don't always consider. So thank you very much for your time and coming out and sharing your experiences and your wisdom and your enthusiasm for self-publishing today. And thanks so much to Flights of Foundry for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's very lovely talking with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ditto. I'll see y'all in the Bartholomew. I'm going to end the webinar. But thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out and watching.
Thank you.